Yes, so welcome to this event. It is the introduction to the Future Food Framework for the South West Food Hub, and particularly for the West of England, but obviously the information is relevant elsewhere as well. For the West of England, we are funded for this piece of work by the West of England Combined Authority as part of their economic recovery plan from COVID and the rural economy bit as well, hence the West of England logo in the top right-hand corner. I'm Chrissie Storry. I work in this area for the South West Food Hub and very much engaging with procurers and suppliers in this particular project. My background in the last quite a few years is around sustainable public sector procurement, and more latterly, probably for the last 5 years, around food. Also a member of the Dynamic Food Procurement National Advisory Board. More acronyms, but that's just a kind of bit of background. So yeah. Come on, click. Hang on 1 second. Okay, so what is this event all about? It's the first in a series for the West of England and for the wider Southwest region. But this is really the first one I'm hosting and holding. It's an overview session, kind of how the Future Food Framework works, where it kind of came from, how to get involved, what it's all about really, and actually how it started. So I'm very much blaming Baines for this, and Richard will talk about this later. But this is a general overview one. We're engaging with suppliers and procurers and everyone else in between, and we will do quite specific sessions, or I will do quite specific sessions for those people. So procurement will be a bit more technical, suppliers, again, technical from a supplier point of view, and how to get involved. And I'm very conscious that some suppliers, and actually, yeah, people find public sector procurement daunting. So really a bit of hand-holding through the process, and it is a long process. I mean, we're starting a year in advance for everything kind of going live, but we're there to help about this one. I really like face-to-face events, so physical face-to-face events, and once all the kind of restrictions are lifted, as and when they are, then we'll be doing more of those. I think they're a bit more friendly. But apart from that, yeah, it's really about what it is and where we're going and what the Southwest Food Hub is doing. So keep with me. I'm a procurement person by heart, sort of by trade for the last goodness how many years, and I am very conscious that it is full and stuffed to the brim with acronyms, more so than any other sort of sector I know. So I'm going to kind of start with some of these, just so you have them in the bottom of your mind, the back of your mind rather, as we go through. So dynamic food procurement, which is one you'll hear quite a lot, is an innovative model of doing public sector food procurement. And the reason really behind it is looking at how we can shorten supply chains, getting more local SME suppliers and producers into it, making it more transparent, making it more agile. And it's really it's a model rather than an actual procurement process itself. The Future Food Framework, which is after today what we'll try and refer to this as always, just kind of that's what we use, is the Southwest pilot for this particular way of doing procurement. Crown Commercial Service, some of you will have heard of Crown Commercial Service, some of you won't, but Crown Commercial Service is the CCS, is the central government procurement function who will own the Future Food Framework. In effect, they're the ones that will be running it and will be kind of owning it. To have Crown Commercial Service on board has been a real coup, because they don't normally come out to the regions too happily and look at this sort of alternative type of procurement. So we're very keen to have them on board. Southwest Food Hub, which are working with CCS to engage and support suppliers and procurers and any other sort of influencers and policymakers. And Greg will talk about Southwest Food Hub after me. And then the TMA, which actually sounds slightly medical, I don't know why, but I always think it's slightly medical, is the technology and management agent who's at the heart of a dynamic food procurement arrangement. And I'll come to that in a moment. But those just kind of get those little acronyms out the way to begin with. And yeah, I'm going to share those widely. They will go on the website, hopefully. So as mentioned, dynamic food procurement, I alluded to a second ago. We're optimizing increased supply chain agility, transparency, and a reduction in supply chain length. So really how we can get a range of suppliers on board, from small local producers who've never even perhaps thought about public sector contracts before, supplying the public sector, to larger people as well. And yeah, it's that encouragement of actually getting good local food in the supply chain, as well as stuff that needs to get a bit bigger. And it comprises of 3 elements. And this is, you won't need to know all about these, but I'm going to put them up front just because it might put some context forward. I mentioned the TMA. That's actually the beating heart of this particular way of doing procurement. and any contact you have with your procurer or a supplier will be through the portal and through the TMA provider. There's logistics processors who will do collection, delivery, consolidation, and working with both with the TMA. And then for suppliers, particularly, it's the dynamic purchasing system, which is a way of doing procurement whereby you can access a contract at any time during the length of that procurement contract. Most conventional procurement routes, once the contract's let, that's it for as long as the contract's in place for. And quite often, and usually, they're looking for suppliers to supply everything for the length of the contract. For a small organization, you can come in, actually not at the start, at any time you need to, as long as you match some criteria and sort of meet some criteria, and pricing is done later. And the contracts are for the DP are within the current procurement rules compliant. So obviously that's all being looked at the moment. I'm done a couple of sort of quite good workshops with the National Food Strategy looking at the procurement rules, but at the moment they sit there and they're all compliant. So yes, all legally done, not trying to get around anything at all. So moving on to the Future Food Framework. Get Greg to say this, it's quite funny. So it's also known as the Crown Commercial Service Southwest Pilot of the DFP. You'll agree that Future Food Framework is much shorter. We've been working with the Crown Commercial Service since July 2018, where they agreed, much to everyone's surprise, to develop this model and work with it for food procurement. At the time, they were it was the beginning of the Brexit process, and they were kind of looking at how can they do things differently, how can they relocalize. Gove was in charge, and it was kind of one of his priorities to look at how we could relocalize supply chains. And they've been working on it for the last couple of years, and it seems a long time. It seems an incredibly long time, but it is public sector procurement, and it does take a while. And they're a behemoth of an organization with hoops of bureaucracy, but they are getting there. So the procurement for the first part, which is the TMA, will start, I say imminently, but that's imminently in procurement terms. They will go out to tender in spring next year, and everything else will fall from that. I'll touch more on timing in a moment. We're currently looking at fresh categories, but it's not limited to those. To limit it to say fresh meat, fruit and veg, I think would be a little careless. But we're looking at other categories as well, and that's part of the engagement side we're doing to see what people, A, what's on offer, but also B, what is needed within that procurement realm as well. And it can be anything, quite random, quite frankly, having experience of procurement. The extensive producer and supplier engagement has started. Greg set up the Southwest Food Hub in the middle of this year to kind of start working on that. And we've started, obviously, the program events around that. There's a really good website, so please have a look at that. I'll give you details at the end. And we're not going to leave you to flounder. We'll be in constant contact if you want us to. Otherwise, just kind of help yourself to information on the website. But you will be invited to various events and how we can work from there. We're very keen to get feedback. Within procurement people tend to be incredibly good at procurement, but they're not particularly good at knowing their markets all the time. And that's not a criticism. They just got so much to do. So the more we can get from the market as well, pushing that forward, that's absolutely great. By the market, I mean the supply market. Southwest Food Hub are undertaking engagement on behalf of CCS, but they are completely independent to CCS, funded separately. They just have an MOU, and again, Greg will go through that. The success of the Future Food Framework and any rollout nationally, which is the plan, relies very much on both procurers and suppliers getting on board. If one side isn't, say for procurers aren't keen to take this model up, then the suppliers can't do anything. If the suppliers are a little bit reticent and a little bit skeptical, then obviously there's nothing to procure. So we do need both sides to get on board. It can be a bit of a leap of faith, but it's not particularly, it will all be kind of clearly mapped out for you. And one thing I need to just say on this is, I mentioned it's a pilot, and it's a year-long pilot, but it will roll over. So we were chatting to Crown Commercial Service last week, and I was asking about timings, and they're going to do constant evaluation and monitoring. And it's not really to see how much value goes through this particular contract, but to see that the systems work, the way they're setting up the contracts work, and things like that. It will then go live around other regions of the UK. The hope in the next kind of 5 years is a national rollout completely, but looking perhaps at the northwest or south coast for the next areas. And it's garnered a lot of attention across the country at the moment as this is a really good way of working. So yeah, we're going to be the first. We're second. Baines was the first, but this is for the Crown Commercial Service. And also, why now? I've been working through procurement for quite a while, but there's this real feeling at the moment that we're on a cusp of something really, really good and really, really innovative and transformational. I hate to mention Brexit and I hate to mention COVID, but they've been real drivers behind this. I mean, talk about silver linings. But also, if we don't get on board with it now, we kind of lose that impetus and that momentum of, and also what people, just individuals, are doing around local food and local supply chains and looking closer to home. So now really is an optimum time. I've been sort of working food procurement for, oh gosh, more years than I care to remember. Probably first started looking about 10, 15 years ago. And it was like, oh, no, that's just kind of, that's too local, that's too, yeah, we'll bother with that another time. But it's so not there anymore. Evidenced by Crown Commercial Service getting on board and supporting this and actually working with it. So the benefits, these are just a couple of benefits that we're kind of outlining, and there are clearly a lot more. So kind of for procurers and client teams, contrary to what people believe about procurement, they don't make all the decisions. So I'm going to start with that. To be fair to procurers and procurement teams, they're quite often brought in at the last moment when something is either going wrong or someone actually needs some procurement technical expertise. So they have client teams, and quite often those client teams are the influencers rather than the procurement teams themselves. But for them, it's really, this contract is owned and managed by CCS. They don't have to do the resource of managing it, letting it, just doing that whole kind of procurement process. It's the time, the money, it's the energy and the resource. For people like school chefs, it's one point of ordering through a online portal. Think of anything, any sort of online shopping, supermarket shopping. It's a similar sort of thing, but very specific to each public sector body. So some incredibly clever tech behind this. There's only one delivery. What we found in the Baines pilot is that because we could consolidate deliveries down into just one delivery once or twice a week, there's a massive reduction in carbon reductions as well, which was just awesome. But it is just one delivery. All those sort of what you've ordered through the shop coming down to you once. We have the logistics people consolidate a lot of that. Access to local producers and suppliers, which you may not have had before. I think particularly around public sector, there's a big drive around carbon. There's around local economic recovery, and looking towards local and kind of more local producers and suppliers to do more of that. And also a range of suppliers. Yes, the smaller local ones, but also if the MOJ using this contract for their prisons, then clearly not all supply can be local or small, because that is just, I think it's one of their biggest contracts at the moment, biggest spend at the moment. And detailed management information is crucial. In terms of food, it's not always that easy to actually pinpoint what's been spent through experience. But actually, working with the system and the TMA, actually that management information will be available. And listening to a conversation yesterday about transparency and suppliers just substituting because they haven't got something, part of the management information actually is, if you're requesting certain standards of your suppliers, whether that's biospace assured, organic, pasture-fed livestock, then that will come out of the reports as well. There's a good track record on this. So for suppliers and producers, again, it's that one point of contact. You're not getting lots of people phoning you up for orders. It is that one point of contact through the portal. Goods are collected if required. We're looking at logistics processes to collect if needed. One of the barriers we've come across before in public sector food procurement with food is that some of the smaller suppliers just can't get to a consolidation hub. They're just too busy, there's no resource, it's too far away. So goods will be collected if required. And so it also, again, is that kind of carbon thing, we're sort of backhauling stuff back into a depot. The logistics processor will consolidate orders. Again, it's not something for the supplier to do. They can just kind of give them what they need in terms, I don't know, a ton of carrots, and they'll get sorted out. The payment should be by the tech and management agent rather than the public body, so it should be a much, much quicker process. And the access to markets with the produce you have at the time you have it. And I always use kale and carrots as an example. I have no idea why, I just do. I quite like the idea. But if a supplier, for example, or a grower, for example, only has produce at one particular time of the year and that's all they know they have, then actually you can enter onto the DPS just with that. You won't be expected to supply everything for a 12-month or 14-month period, or sorry, 4-year period. So it's kind of what you have at the time, that great quality stuff at the time you have it. And if it's not available, then you don't appear on the DPS. So there's no disappointment in terms of fulfillment. In terms of the timing, I mentioned it's a one-year pilot, but with ongoing evaluation. And that'll be done by various researchers, by Crown Commercial Service. South West Food Hub will also be part of that as well, seeing how it works out. National rollout during the one-year period, clearly starting with different regions. Crown Commercial Service aiming to split the UK up into 17 regions, so that's quite small for Crown Commercial Service, those kind of bits. And each one will have relevant suppliers in the area, regional logistics processes, but just the one TMA. The TMA contract process starts in spring next year, going and the logistics and DPS processing starting in early 2020. That might seem like a long way away, 12 months, 15 months, but actually in terms of procurement and getting people ready and markets ready, it's not overly long, and it gives us time to work with that and get stuff right, more importantly than start and then go half cocked. And as I say, engagement has started. And you'll be seeing a lot more. Greg is doing an amazing job of promoting the South West Food Hub in terms of how this works. So look out for that. We've got coverage now from Gloucester, West of England area, and sort of the rest of the Southwest, and just tapping into Dorset and Wiltshire as well. It's a massive area we're looking at. So that engagement has started and will be coordinated, which I think is incredibly important as well. So coming to the end really, so getting involved, we need you. As I mentioned, it needs everybody to work together on this. And also we need to be able to enable you to be able to do that as well, if that makes sense. Feel free to email me or Greg or Ellen. Those contact details are the website, mine's in a moment. Through the website, it's always being updated. If you think you've missed something in terms of webinars, and go back and have a look at that, because even the ones not just in the West of England will be up there. And then any events that you're invited to, or that you're invited to, or you think might be useful. I mean, give us suggestions for anything you need to know. Whether it's because if get a group together, because if one person's got a question, more people will have a question as well. So feel free to suggest stuff to us as well. We're always open to that. But again, if we're putting stuff out there saying, come and listen to this, come and learn about this, come and feedback, then please do come along to those. I mentioned feedback is absolutely crucial to be able to make this work as well. So finally, my details are Chrissie at the southwestfoodhub.co.uk, the southwestfoodhub.co.uk is the website. If you think you know the address and you haven't looked it up, please remember to put the in front of southwestfoodhub.uk. Otherwise, you go somewhere completely different and get completely confused. So that's kind of where we are at the moment. That's me for the time being. It's a bit of a rattle through, and I'm sorry about that. And I'm probably aware that some of it's quite confusing, hence sending slides out afterwards, and hence questions we can answer. But yes, it is a start. It will become clear as the process goes along and the engagement goes along as well. So thank you. I will hand you over to Greg to take it from there.
Thanks, Chrissie, and thanks to the West of England Combined Authority for supporting the event and supporting us, really. And I'm only going to take a few minutes. I'm going to rattle through even faster, Chrissie, to let Richard get to the floor, really. But yeah, just to say, from our perspective, as Chrissie's given the background, we're here, we're active, we're working. As the Southwest Food Hub, our objective is to make sure that we're working with the local enterprise partnerships as closely as possible. They obviously are the conduit between business and through government. And they have great links across each of the region, and working with them allows us to align with their strategies, because what we're really focused on is making sure that this happens. It's been a long time coming. This dates back to the government's plan for public procurement 2014, but now with the technology and the will in place, and as Chrissie alluded to, with the fact that we have so many issues coming at the food sector, not least Brexit, not least the food security issues that have been highlighted through COVID, and what's looming now is that there will be adjustments need to be made to align with the new agriculture bill and the environmental bill. So what we're hoping is that there is, let's put it bluntly, there is a lot of stick coming the way of the food sector. What we're hoping is that this opportunity with public sector can offer some carrot to offset that against. And we're here purely, Southwest Food Hub is here purely to help to facilitate that by making sure that everybody who needs to know knows about us to start with, and then helping people to get ready to engage in the future food framework. I said it, Chrissie, without stumbling, when it's up and running and when it gets ready. Chrissie outlined some actual timescales with you, and they are the latest timescales. They've slipped beyond what our expectations were initially, and we're working really closely with Crown Commercial Services to try and do whatever we can to stick with those timescales, or maybe even improve on them. But obviously, you know, everybody's been subject to challenges through COVID, and there has been a redeployment of some of the Crown Commercial Services staff. But we're lobbying at a high level to try and pile in the resources needed to bring this to life. We're working with MPs, working with DEFRA, EFRA and Crown Commercial Services to see what we can do there. So from our perspective, events like this are critical. As Chrissie said, keep in touch. A really good way to keep in touch is sign up for the newsletter on the website, because that means that we will make sure you know about all of these events. And as Chrissie said, you know, please pile any questions at us. We want to find all of the bumps in the road, and we want to be able to provide solutions to those before this goes live, because when it goes live, we hope to make a success of it in the Southwest, but then make it really ripe and ready to be rolled out across the UK. And we hope, really, our aspiration is that the same principles could be applied to the private sector too, because, you know, this is an opportunity for SMEs, businesses, particularly in the food sector, to have some inspiration and some opportunity to chase after, because we need it. You know, we know that we're going to need to have much more of our own produce available to us through shorter supply chains. So that's all I was really wanting to say today is thanks for your support. Please keep in touch, and let's hand back to Chrissie to take you through the rest of what is a great agenda. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thanks, Greg. And for those who don't know Greg and you wonder why there's people walking around his background, he actually is part of Sharpham Dairy. So he's got cheesemakers on site as he was speaking and making cheese, which I always think is fun. I would like to hand you over to Richard Howroyd of Bath North East Somerset Council. He's a strategic procurement and commissioning manager. I think it's the right way around, could be the other way around. And a few years ago, so 2015, 2016, Richard was instrumental in putting this arrangement into Baines on a school food contract. It was a leap of faith, it has to be said, and we'd done a huge amount of market engagement, both with suppliers and with tech companies, very extensive, and came to the conclusion that this was the way forward, which then became called the Baines model, which is now called dynamic food procurement. But if it wasn't for Richard, we wouldn't probably be here we are now. So I will leave you to him to tell you the Baines story for that. Richard, over to you. And don't forget to unmute yourself.
Good morning, everyone. I assume you can hear me, Chrissie?
Yep, thank you.
That's fine. I'll do a double check. Do you want to click over onto the slide? Good morning, everyone. It's firstly nice to see so many people on this call, including lots of people who I know and have probably been on the journey with us already. If I take you back to the start of what we did, this all started at a supplier engagement event at a wonderful farm with a nice children's play area, which everyone enjoyed as well, in which we were really engaging with suppliers, academics, a whole load of people around our local food strategy and what was our think local strategy in terms of procurement. And at the start of it, we were thinking very traditional processes. We'd worked with Bristol City Council and other authorities on joint arrangements. And as we started talking with people, we started to realise that maybe the traditional approach wasn't the best model. We were having lots of the local farming community and local suppliers asking how they could get into the supply chain. And in a number of cases, we'd had a few who'd actually been burnt quite badly in the past around trying to work with the public sector. But at the same time, we started to talk with some very different people. And I think one of the most crucial things was we had a number of really expert food professionals working with us who'd worked in the hospitality industry, in particular around hotels and including fine dining, but they also very committed to school food. And we had at this first session, this very innovative tech company come to talk to us. And there was a gentleman who at the time was very, I think, quite scared about having this discussion with the public sector. And he talked about the local company he had and the technology platform he had. And I think he thought at the time he was wasting his time. But after he left the initial meeting, everyone in the room turned around and said, wow, this is a way forward. And actually, it really got us starting thinking differently, because clearly we were looking at, normally food procurement was dominated by the very big providers, the Breakses, etc. From that point of view, who are very good at doing what they do. And actually, we would continue to have relationship with some of those companies from that point of view. But we realized we could start doing things differently, and that the procurement regulations allowed us to do it. But like all things with procurement, it can be quite bureaucratic. And I think some of the rules that even under the 2015 procurement regulations had put in place still made it quite difficult to use things like dynamic purchasing systems. So for the uninitiated, a dynamic purchasing system is not a system. It's a route to market which is enshrined within the procurement regulations. So we finally saw a way that we could actually use it, but it needed technology. And I can tell you now, during the pilot, we learned the reasons why, if you didn't have good technology, it would not work, because it could be some of the things we were doing became very time intensive at the time. And without the changes to the technology and using the technology partner, we would have never delivered what we did. But from our point of view, it was a game changer. And we ended up launching it, which I really enjoyed, on the doorsteps of Bristol City Council at City Hall, with a wonderful cook-off between two of our local schools, in a ready steady cook format, which I think blew lots of people's minds at the time when we started talking about what we were doing. And I'm sure Chrissie will share the videos of that, which was absolutely wonderful. But we then launched it within our schools. The technology provider and the logistics provider relocated to Keynsham from Somerset, and we put everything in place. And I think this slide really just highlights what we managed to do. And I think when I look back at it, because clearly, unfortunately, I don't have a school food service. I wish I did. This demonstrated how innovation could actually work, and how we could really do things differently. So, for example, we ended up retraining all our school chefs to use iPads to do ordering. We used embedded P cards to ensure prompt payment of suppliers, etc. We got it working really, really well from that point of view. The logistics worked really well using small delivery vans that could actually get onto the schools in a safe manner. The provider was even then collecting food from suppliers on the way back from doing the deliveries. The satisfaction in terms of the quality of food was superb. It really was. for example, one of the best examples was we began to be able to use produce that wouldn't normally get into the supply chain for the supermarkets or to the hospitality trade. So the best example of that was actually, and we've got Andy Jeffries on the line here, was to be able to use smaller potatoes for baked potatoes, which the kids loved because it meant they could have whole potatoes rather than the one cut in half. It was complex. We learned an awful lot, and I think that's all being incorporated into the work that Crown Commercial Services are doing. And clearly there was a lot of things that we did which have now been picked up and are having to be changed in terms of things like the contractual relationships from that point of view. But again, the good things was, I think people were skeptical about whether it was financially viable. Yes, and we did have some issues, and I think we learned a lot of things about the need to spot price, the need for hedging, the need to have some good wholesalers working with us. We worked with some excellent meat producers too. But when we did the final evaluation, we found that after inflation, we'd probably made a 6% saving, which I must say came as quite as a shock to us from that point of view. And then there's Chrissie mentioned, we also had a substantial CO2 saving from that point of view. We managed to make sure all our schools were at minimum at Food for Life Silver, which was really good too. I think all in all, it was massively positive and proved that we could do something innovative. And again, going back to the innovation, part of that was we started asking questions as to how other countries were doing things. And there was a really good model we saw in Germany at the time. And I asked a question, how could they do that within the procurement regulations? And a senior academic said to me at the time, well, they're Germany. They just don't comply with the procurement regs. So I was thinking, oh dear, how can I do that? But we found that we could do it in a fully compliant manner with the regs. So really, I'm open to any questions at any time. So that's probably really all I want to say. Is that I'm sure I'm sure this will be a success, because apart from anything, it's the right thing to do. And again, if you look at profile, Marcus Rashford, the issue over food is just so important. So to have arrangements like this really does help us tackle poverty and all sorts of issues. So again, I really would urge that people could support Crown Commercial Services and the Southwest Food Hub in trying to make this a success. So back to you, Chrissie.
Thank you very much. Very useful. And I think that the point on the costs which Richard made is very pertinent. In a lot of minds, you use the word sustainable or something like that, and people automatically assume it's more expensive. And the Baines contract showed it definitely wasn't. There was because the way it was set up, there was an ability to actually just not have very expensive products on the list. I mean, there's a couple of classic examples, but it meant that it could be what was being available was very, 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 very visible, as well as past going just from previous suppliers going, you're just having this. It did make that difference. And also sometimes, think like organic stuff, sometimes the organic version of a slightly different cut of meat was cheaper than conventional. So in terms of Food for Life, where organic was a certain amount, and that helped quite a lot as well. So it worked out incredibly well. And the chefs was an interesting one. Let's say they were a little bit reticent to begin with, but actually that whole kind of training around online ordering for chefs, some of them had never used a computer before, and they were trained. I mean, the tech agent did an incredibly good job walking them through that. And I think it was just all but one in the end we were completely happy with it. But the knock-on from that was the whole kind of government digital by default approach, where everything is now being done online. Some of those school cooks and chefs didn't have access to the internet before, had never used it, a bit scared of it, but actually using it for this, and then enabled them to carry on and do it sort of in their normal day life, and especially leaving it to their 12-year-old grandson or something, or son. So it's not just food that's being delivered, it's a whole raft of other stuff that was delivered as well, which I don't think Baines quite realised that kind of side of the promotion, that one. And certainly the CO2 stuff wasn't even looked at when we were putting contract specs together. But actually when it was, after being in place for a while, I was doing a case study and got measured through that, the tech agent measured as well, and it's like, wow, that's actually quite significant amount of savings on that previous contract. And the other contract wasn't bad. So it was yeah, some really good office wins for that. And so we're kind of hoping that will then replicate to some extent across the region. Thanks, Richard. I'm going to stop sharing the screen now. We've got Sian from WECA in a second to give you an update on that. Oh, look, there's all your lovely faces. But I hope that's been useful so far. And I'll have a look at the chat box while WECA's talking. But that's kind of where we are. So yes, I hope that's been useful for you so far. So let me just find, are you there, Sian?
I am here, thank you.
There you are, hold on a second, I'll get your slides up for you.
Fabulous. That was such an inspiring example. It's really superb to hear that.
Oh, brilliant. There you go, all yours.
Fantastic. So I definitely know, I can see some familiar faces. Hi, Steve and Mandy, and various people on the call. So great to see you again. So my name is Sian. I'm an enterprise executive at the West of England Combined Authority. We support all businesses across the region, but specifically I'm going to be talking about food and rural businesses. So I know that there's lots of partners on here, suppliers, and food businesses. So let me just, so if we can just, are you able to just pop it onto the next slide at all, please, Chrissie? Sorry. So I just wanted you to make you aware. So some of you already know some of the things that we do. But just to make you aware that we have got loads of support services and additional support services that we've created as a result of COVID and pivoted just to support as a wraparound support really to this, to support food and rural businesses across the region. Food and rural businesses have been hit quite dramatically. They're really important for us in the region. So I'm just going to talk through just some of the support, and in pink I've put examples of the kind of things that we've been supporting with, and in blue is more kind of like a headline support programs that we offer for food and rural businesses across the region. So feel free to, you can refer businesses to us, you can come for support, you can partner with us. You know, we would love to hear from you essentially. So so the first thing that we offer is bespoke business support. So we've had a lot of food and rural businesses needing to pivot, to diversify. So whether they're changing their land, so some of their farm and agriculture land, changing the kinds of provisions to obviously pivot because restaurants and things have closed, and they're moving to takeaway and what that means and safety implications. So we support businesses through that. We've supported businesses through startup and scale up journeys. So brand new food businesses that want to kind of operate in this new climate that they find themselves. And we've seen a lot of self-employed people wanting to be things like home cooks and things like that. We support with trading better online. So COVID has had a huge impact on the digital landscape. And so we have got a program, it's fully funded. So all of our support is fully funded for trading better online. And this can help. We work with TechSpark This can help with things like website development or upgrade, branding, social media strategy, digital support, marketing, and accessing new markets. And this kind of fits well with the kind of things that this pilot project is offering as well. Kind of goes hand in hand with that, around that accessing new markets. Technology adoption. So if food and rural businesses need support with any kind of productivity benchmarking, so maybe they need to, it could be the reviewing their people, their systems. We've had a lot of businesses that are just in light of the COVID landscape, as you are likely to be aware, and it's impacted you. They've reviewed their landscape. Things have changed so much, and so they've reviewed the way that people do things, and we can support with either reviewing the actual products and services or people, and support with how they can adopt tech to make them more efficient and productive essentially. We run a free accountancy program. So this is for businesses that only has a bookkeeper, but doesn't have anybody that can provide financial strategy support or support with apps. Again, it comes into this kind of productivity landscape. So if they need any kind of accountancy support, then that's fully funded and they can get support with that. We have also newly launched something called Workforce of the Future. This is where we do skills needs assessment. So if the organisation is changing, pivoting as a result of COVID, they need to either upskill staff, take on apprenticeships, interns, kickstart staff, create jobs, or be involved in things like virtual work experience to help with a skills gap. So it could be with marketing and things like that can support with that. We can provide support for businesses needing leadership management support and organizational development. And this is kind of a whole raft of things, everything from things like mentoring, peer networking, redundancy signposting, and preventing redundancy. So if organizations are kind of worried about redundancies, we can signpost to organizations that can prevent that, as well as support that prevention through growth ourselves. Workforce development, accessing talent, if there's skills gaps in particular sectors. Finance, we can support with finance. This is a key thing that we've supported with, whether that's grants, loans, investment advice, innovation. So if there's food and rural projects, so it could be robotics food production, for example, and people have got innovative ideas that they want to scale, then we could support with that, and give access to not only our own funding but wider funding within the business ecosystem across the region, nationally and internationally, depending on what their growth goals are. We support with environment, so things like it could be climate impact change, sustainability. We do pre-carbon checks. If the business is growing, you need maybe a new food manufacturing plant, for example. We offer green business grants, so say you need solar panels and things like that. We also offer things like support in strengthening the network. So because we support so many businesses in so many different sectors, and we've got so many partners across the region, we can do all different kinds of referrals. So whether it's lawyers, so maybe it's a new food product and they need a legal agreement or terms and conditions on their website, for example. They need designers or traders. We've got everything from kind of people that fit pipes and things for food and rural businesses like breweries and things like that, or within the kitchens. We offer other referrals as well, and signposting to quite technical support, so some of which you already know, but so whether that's packaging advice for food businesses, whether they want to get involved in food festivals, statutory regulations, they need accommodation support, but that's quite niche to food businesses, or any technical support, then we can refer on to that. And lastly, but definitely not least, we provide a voice to regional and central government. So within the COVID framework, we've been working with all different sectors, and so me particularly has been involved in a food and rural sector. So is Steve, and so is Mandy, and other partners across the region, to feed into a regional recovery task force, so that took on board all of the views of food and rural businesses and how we should recover. And the programs that you see have been created, adapted as a result of essentially the feedback that we've been given in those particular meetings. But on top of that, we do a weekly report to central government and to BAYS. So any food businesses that have got particular solutions that we want to feed back, we're part of the M9 too, which is the lead secretariat for the devolved administrations. And so we can feed that and lobby on behalf of food businesses as well if there's, you know, significant issues that they want to make BAYS aware, and they want solutions in relation to those things. So it's really great to, you know, meet you all. And like I said, we'd love for, if you've got any food businesses you kind of want to refer to us, you want to connect with us as a partner if you don't already know us, or you just kind of need some advice and support in relation to your growth goals, then you know, get in touch, because you know, we'd love to hear from you. I think my details, yeah, so we've got, so you can either contact me personally, so because I've kind of got that food and rural link, or you can be triaged through our growth hub. So we're open 9:30 till 4:30, and so there's the number there, and we've got a full range of advisors that can support. So, and one thing I would say is, do sign up to our newsletter. So similar to the newsletters already discussed, it really, we mention all different programs and projects that, and there's newly launched projects and programs each week, or each 2 weeks, should I say. So definitely kind of sign up to our newsletter if you're not already signed up, because it tells you about all different opportunities across the region. And just great to be involved in this and to support such a fantastic, inspiring project. Thank you for everybody that spoke today.
Thank you very much. I'm sure you'll be heavily involved over the next year or so.
Yes, definitely looking forward to it.
Good stuff. Right, I'm going to stop sharing there. Brilliant, thank you. We're kind of almost coming to the end. I just want to say a quick thing about tech, and what you've probably picked up from this is the whole thing is kind of tech driven to a certain extent. And we're very conscious that that is the case, and for some businesses that might not always be the easiest route forward. But in terms of how everything's going to work, it will be tech based. We can't really get away from that. So if you do have those maybe upskilling needs you need, or kind of hand holding through some of the stuff we're doing, then obviously WECA can help, and also so can the Southwest Food Hub. But it is, I'm afraid, as Andy Jeffrey, who was part of the Baines contract, said, the initial supplier engagement qualification questionnaire was 19 pages, and we said to him, that's actually short for procurement. You won't be getting pages and pages of documents, it will be online, but we're trying to, again, we'll be trying to make that with Crown Commercial Service as short and as relevant as it possibly can be. Obviously through procurement regs, there's some stuff you have to ask, but otherwise we will be trying to shorten that down, but it will be online. So we can't really get away from that at the moment, but just to make you aware of that up front. I think I'm pretty much done at the moment. I haven't got much else to add. If anybody, I'll quickly have a quick look through the chat. Has anybody got any questions they'd like to raise? Just unmute yourself and go for it, because I can't see everyone online.
Hi, Christine. It's Christian from University of West of England. Hiya. Hello. I just put it in the chat, but obviously in terms of systems, we use Procure Wizard as our dynamic purchasing system. And most universities, if they're not already on it, they will be going onto Procure Wizard as part of the TUCO framework.
Yep.
Will this, nominated DPS management company, will they manage data in Procure Wizard? Is that part of the project?
They're working on that at the moment, and we will be talking to kind of Procure Wizard people to see how that can work. Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah. Yeah, I know Bristol University is also about to implement it as well, aren't they? So yeah. Cool. Is there anything that I've missed in the chat that I didn't think so? No, Ellen's doing a brilliant job. Thank you. Yeah, anything else anyone would like to add to that, as we're going to finish about 5 minutes early, which is amazing. I clearly went faster than I thought I was going to. No?
Just one quickly for me.
Yep.
is that we will publish shortly before Christmas, we're aiming to a list of events that are going to happen in 2021. So again, if you signed up for the newsletter, not to overdo it, then you'll find out about those, and we look forward to hopefully you joining us for some of those.
Yep. Yes, and also if you think there's something we're missing, then please let us know, and we can include it. Hi, Andy.
Chrissie, just to say, I want to make it clear whether Sian, in her talk, she was talking about funding or help or whatever for businesses. Does that apply to the whole Southwest or just the WECA region? Because I noticed we've got some people from Devon and Somerset. Does it apply to them?
The WECA funding will apply to the West of England area, and I suspect Greg can probably help on this. I suspect the local enterprise partnerships will be doing similar sort of schemes in the other areas as well. I suspect.
Yeah.
It's government funding.
Yeah.
I mean,
Sorry.
I was going to say, for the other regions' perspective, Sian, I mean, we will look. There will be other events held similar to this in those other regions, and they will identify and clarify what support is out there and available. Very similar things are available.
Yep.
And we can always sign. So we are supposed to support businesses across the West of England region within our combined authority, but we can also signpost to local growth hubs, and we've got a kind of an understanding of what's going on in the national landscape anyway, so we can signpost you to general things. So whether that's, for example, Grant Finder has a whole host of different grants and national initiatives, but definitely regionally there's some different pots each region. So we obviously can tell you specific stuff within our region for businesses across the combined authority, but essentially outside of that we can definitely signpost you.
Yep.
Yeah.
Can I add a bit of clarity onto that one? And Sian, correct me if I'm wrong, but clearly you also, for this purpose, cover North Somerset.
Oh no, yes, we do. We absolutely cover North Somerset. We support, yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And I say that because clearly North Somerset is not technically part of the combined authority, but so in terms of the LEP, it is.
Yes, so it's Bristol, Bath, and North East Somerset. Yeah, South Gloss.
Yeah. And Mandy Berry from North Somerset is also part of the economic development team, and the food hub, I think, can probably help with that as well. So yeah.
Yeah, is it also useful to add that across the whole of the Southwest, our Foodworks Centre in Weston can also offer all sorts of technical support, business support. It's got commercial kitchens there for any scale-up support, labelling, product development, and that's impartial advice, again, open to any food and drink business. I'll post the website on the chat.
Brilliant, thanks for that. And for those of you who haven't had a chance to have a look at Foodworks site, which opened just as COVID hit, it's well worth having a look at. It's a lovely venue just off the M5 Junction 21. And if I start holding events physically, that's kind of where they're going to be, because it's such a nice venue. Great. Anyone else any more? Nope. I will go through the chat again when this is finished. We'll finish recording, and yeah, we'll disappear online. But thank you very much for joining us. That's been great. It's been quite inspiring how many people turned up, which is lovely. And we'll be carrying on being in touch. And as Carrie say, please keep in touch with us as well. So yes, thank you very much.